Hello and welcome to Moneylife News and Views. I am Debashis Basu. The first rule of governance in India is that people's representatives will stop listening to people the moment they acquire power. The second rule is that the longer a group is in power, the more arrogant and further removed from reality will it be. And the third rule is ruling politicians will echo each other, no matter how ridiculous and far removed from reality they sound to us. The best examples of all of these three rules are around us right now. Remember the last days of the Congress-led government in 2011-2013? Rampant corruption, brutal rapes, economic stagnancy, and policy failures had gripped the country. To protest against that, the docile, the busy, and the insensitive, all of the citizens had come down to the streets. Is the current mood turning in that direction? All the ingredients of those gloomy days of UPA 2 are here, minus, of course, the obvious centralized corruption for which the UPA 2 was so infamous. Misgovernance and aimless drift is palpable. There are protests against brutal rapes again. The economy is spiraling downwards, and now suddenly the people have to deal with a new problem, a new citizenship process and a national registration that will cost more than 70,000 crore at a time when the state's coffers are empty. Spontaneous protests against this very badly timed move have erupted all over the country. And exactly like the previous regime, the current one, 6 years in power, is not listening. The previous Prime Minister was personally honest, but seemed remote from everyday issues of citizens and businessmen. The current PM does not seem to be any different, while ministers down the line are divorced from reality. Mr. P. Chidambaram's diktats, if you remember, were like King Canute, ordering economic actors to act and forcing events to unfold according to his desires. They never worked. On Friday, the current finance minister sounded exactly like him when she said, "I have asked public sector banks to give loans instead of doing reverse repo," while asserting that there is no government interference on banks' decision making. She also advised Indian businessmen to bid enthusiastically for government companies which are now being privatized, asking them to come out of their self-doubt and unleash their animal spirits. Clearly, she's not listening, or she's full of herself. Some 16 years ago, Arun Shourie, as the disinvestment minister, had said that the government companies are not crown jewels. These are bleeding ulcers. Under successive governments, public sector companies have been allowed to drift and become worse. To ask anyone to bid enthusiastically and come out of the self-doubt is actually very laughable. On the same day that the finance minister was advising successful businessmen to do what she thinks is the right thing to do, the Prime Minister instructed members of ASSOCHAM, a top industry association filled with very successful businessmen and multinationals, to take decisions freely and invest without fear, as if there is an opportunity, they need to be goaded to do anything. And what is this fear the Prime Minister is talking about? As I said, politicians live in an echo chamber. Anybody who has some understanding of doing business in India knows how extraordinarily difficult it is to be successful and scale up operations, creating hundreds and thousands of jobs. Companies that have survived and grown in the toxic political economy of India, handled everyday bribes, braved enormous delays in decision making, cut through maddening rules and licenses, battled court cases, negotiated capricious demands from revenue departments, tiptoed around draconian laws, are actually superachievers. They don't need to be lectured to by ministers. But how come politicians, some of whom have not even won elections, much less contributed anything meaningful to the nation, never created jobs or wealth, are never embarrassed to sermonize to these same successful businessmen that they should be courageous or overcome self-doubt? Where do they get so much of confidence to speak with such condescension? The reason is simple. Once they acquire power, they are removed from reality, labeling all uncomfortable facts as negativity, confident that what they're doing is absolutely right and there's no scope for improvement. They just don't listen. This was exactly the attitude of Pranab Mukherjee, the man responsible for enormous bad loans and the steroid-filled fake growth of post-2008 period. On Friday, the Prime Minister explained that the economy is in doldrums because the current government had to clean up the mess of the previous regime. Now, assuming this to be true, who is going to ask the PM why did his government award Bharat Ratna to a man who was singularly responsible for the mess that he's cleaning up? We are not supposed to ask these and a million other uncomfortable questions. Leaders in power are only interested in telling you what you should be doing. And of course, they're all the time echoing each other. The patronizing advice to have no fear came on the same day from the FM and the Prime Minister. All this leads me to wonder, why do successful businessmen who are creating jobs in a job-starved country while politicians are destroying them sit as supplicants before politicians, much less subject themselves to demeaning reprimands or gratuitous advice? In the ASSOCHAM meeting on Friday, the Prime Minister was miffed about the lukewarm applause that he was getting and rebuked them for it. He even snubbed them for not being able to understand what he was trying to say. The reaction of this successful businessman to such humiliation was laughter and increased clapping. As the PM stepped up his insults and accused them for calling different ministers and asking for favors, they sat through listening in silence. I understand that there is very little we can do. We have all our jobs and businesses and our lives to lead. We can change the government once in 5 years, but that doesn't seem to lead to any better outcome. The least we should do is ignore their endless preaching. And certainly we should reject their tricks of subjecting us to endless cycle of inquisition, guilt trip and tension about patriotism, nationalism, entrepreneurship, cleanliness, black money, new identity and so on, while netas, babus and party hacks keep themselves safely above all such trials. Thanks for watching.